System TES, Talmud Eser Sefirot, Part 1, Tzimtzum Restriction and Kav Line, Inner Reflection. And we'll go over a few of the concepts we do every time. We'll do it quickly. We've got the rules to understand Talmud Eser Sefirot. The idea is that whenever we're reading any of the material, Kabbalah material, we have to read it not as unnecessary when we're thinking that it's talking about reality or the cascading of reality, but rather we have to make it necessary by talking about our perception, how we perceive things, not how they really are. Then you've got impossible, is when we think it's talking about the past, about that either the breaking of the vessels happened in the past, or about Avraham Avinu doing things in the past. The idea is that we have to make them possible by understanding these are states we're going to go through in our future, not states that we went through in our past. And then finally, secrets is when we think it's talking about others, that it's talking about different people or a creature of some sort. We disclose it to ourselves when we think it's talking about ourselves. So it's all about our perception that we're going to go through in our future, and it's all about ourselves. And here are all the phases we go through before we cross the barrier. We've got phase 1, which is humanity, which is 1.1, which is unformed humanity, which are the desires for food, sex, and family. Then we have 1.2, which is chaos humanity, which are the desires for money, honor, and knowledge, which are basically business desires we interact with other people. Then we get our passive point in the heart, which we feel is 1.3, which is darkness humanity, where we normally try to, the point in the heart is a desire for control over our lives, and we go to religion or mysticism to find the reason for why things are happening. Then we reach 1.4, which is spiritual humanity, where we find ourselves to Kabbalah. Then we reach the spiritual society, which is 2.1, unformed society, the society preparation, basically connection. Then we've got 2.2, which is chaos society, which is mutual guarantee. And then we get our active point in the heart. Then we feel 2.3, which is darkness society, which is, we feel the society limitation. We feel the society is not enough to actually get us to cross the barrier. Then we reach 2.4, which is spiritual society. When we work on cleaning our concepts, we understand that the problem is not that we don't have enough books of Kabbalah, but that we don't even understand the language we're reading when we're reading Kabbalah material. Then we have 3.1, which is the unformed group, where we have the correct goal and the focus on becoming the creator. Then we have 3.2, which is the chaos group, is where we're taking those intellectual concepts and making them emotional, trying to feel something from them. Then we get our intense point in the heart, and then we reach 3.3, which is the darkness group, which is when we feel our pain point, and each class has a different pain point. I would go to Article 22, Class of the Soul, and System Concepts for more information about that. Then we have 3.4, which is the spirit group, where we understand that our ego, we need our ego basically to cross the barrier, and we have that anticipation that we're going to be growing it in the 4th phase, which is in the individual phase. Then we have 4.1, which is unformed individual. So when we have doubts about the path, and we basically have to answer those intellectual and emotional doubts. Then we have 4.2, which is chaos individual, where we have to take responsibility over our entire reality in potential of everything that's happened and everything that will happen, over the will to receive. Then we have 4.3, which is darkness individual, where we feel vulnerable because we're understanding that we have no bestowal and everything we're doing is for the will to receive itself, and we don't actually have the will to bestow. We're not able to be in that intention, and we have to take ownership and potential of that will to bestow of the Creator within us. Then we finally have 4.4, which is spirit individual, where we have that excitement, elevation. We've grown our left line. We have to, at the last, in 4.4.3, activate our right line, and then we feel that state of elevation, excitement, and then we cross the barrier and we enter emptiness. Any questions?
So our work is to identify the point we're in and discern with the friends how to get to the next point.
The idea is to know where you are, know where you're going to go to, and focus your discernments on your next degree. The idea is that there is a vast amount of material, both in corporeality and in the Kabbalah books, that you could just basically lose yourself in for years. The idea of these points is to, the idea of these phases is to really focus on you. What discernments do you need to collect in order to advance to your next phase? And if you don't have that focus, then you're basically expanding horizontally instead of advancing vertically.
So if you're at a certain stage, you want to move on to the next stage in the most efficient and quick way. Let's say you're in 3.3 and you want to move on to 3.4. Do you use the group mainly? Do you use the Kabbalah books mainly? Do you use both of them?
You basically use all the four phases. You use your humanity side, the people in your environment which don't have a point in the heart. You're going to use the spiritual society, like Bnei Baruch. You're going to use the group, like system concepts, and you're going to use your individual that you've been assigned to, and you're going to use all of them together with the books and the lessons and the sessions to advance forward.
Yeah, but when you're using them, what do you focus yourself on? I mean, because it's sort of like, I don't know what my next stage is. So how do I use the Kabbalah books, for example, to get a sense of where I'm supposed to go and collect discernments on that? Or do I just use all of the tools that I have in front of me and things will happen on their own? The thing is that the next stage is an unknown. So how can you prepare yourself for something which is unknown? How do you focus yourself to get there as fast as possible when the unknown is unknown?
Well, if you're in 3.3, which is towards the end of the pain point, your next stage is 3.4, which is anticipation. It's anticipation of your ego. So the idea is to collect discernments on why you need your ego to cross the barrier. Because the whole idea of phase 4, which is basically only to receive without wanting to bestow in any shape or form, why is that needed? Why can't you just go from phase 3 to phase 4 and advance? Like, why do you need that phase 4? Why do you need that ego to be able to advance?
So every fourth stage, 1.4, 2.4, 3.4 is like the ego. That's where, what happens in the four Bchinot and the fourth Malchut. Yeah, Malchut. That's where, that's all the 0.4 are the Malchut stages?
Yes. So it is in 3.4, you're basically being in the spirit phase, you're being in that anticipation for the next phase. You're being in anticipation for growing your ego, which is what you're going to be doing in 4.1, 4.2, and so forth.
So I'm sorry for being a nudnik, but if I'm at 3.4, I mean, are you saying that I need to focus on anticipation? What do I need to be looking for from all of the tools, the Kabbalah, the books, the group, etc.?
Why you need to grow your ego?
Why do I need to grow my ego?
Yes.
All right.
Well, can we get just a more clear definition on what it even means to grow your ego?
It means to grow your emotional and intellectual understanding of what you're going to be dealing with. So the idea is that normally when we deal with the will to bestow, it's very immature. And we're wanting to mature that concept of bestowal. And the way we do that is by injecting discernments into that point in the heart, into that immature concept of bestowal. So we're going to be using, and that's what our ego is. The ego is that salt, that detail that we want to grow, to give that to the bestowal. So the idea is that normally with humanity, we have no problem growing our ego towards egoistic needs. Like, if I want to do a business, I got different venues I can go to basically grow my ego. What we don't have is a way to grow our ego towards the goal of bestowal. That's where we actually get stuck, because we normally think of bestowal as something altruistic, something detached, something very abstract. We normally think of altruistic people as being poor, but happy even so. We basically have this total separation between bestowal and ego. And the idea is to basically inject the ego into that bestowal and actually give it more depth and understand that real bestowal actually requires an ego and actually requires you to have a sense of self to actually be able to love others. And that if you don't love yourself, you don't love others.
I think what people are maybe trying to ask also, Zakai, is like, it's not that they don't understand the states. And I think somehow we think that there's an application, something we have to do. Of course, there's nothing we can do physically to apply the concepts other than read and discern them and share them with the group. But I think that what I'm hearing is a question, or at least I'm feeling, is what are the steps? You know, okay, say you're in 2.3 and you want to get to 2.4. Sorry about the mic. And you want to advance, and we know that any physical action we do is null and void. So it's at each level. Is it always just discernment and the group and the books? I'm sorry, that's my question.
Yeah, it's always collecting discernments the whole way. And that's why it's not about what you do with your hands and legs or what you speak. It's about what you discern, where your desire is, and what you have to focus on, right, with your discernments that you're trying to collect. So it's just the idea of this table is just basically say, if you put your focus on that direction, it'll yield you better results. So do you have to have this? No, you don't. But you're going to sort of waste your time on points that you don't need to discern. For example, let's say you're at a certain stage and you start discerning what is greatness after the barrier, what is smallness after the barrier, what is breaking the vessels. If you're before the barrier, you shouldn't be spending emotional, intellectual time on discerning those concepts. You'll need them later on, but not right now. So it is just to really give you a place to focus you a bit more on what direction you should be doing on. Like, let's say you're in 3.2. The next stage is the pain point. Focus on what is the pain point, how do I see the pain point in others, how do I see the pain point in me, what is the pain points, what class am I, all those kind of stuff. So does it mean you can't read anything else? You can read other things, but the idea is that your main focus should be on what is your pain point and how can you get to experience it as quick as possible.
If after the barrier is when we actually have our soul or self, like before the barrier, when we say that we do it for ourselves, does it mean that we're doing it for our ego right now as we know it, or because we want to attain a higher self?
Before the barrier, we're doing it basically for our ego, for our body, for the people around us, stuff like that. After the barrier, you're doing it also for your sense of self, but your sense of self now is not the ego, but the creator within you. That desire to control your reality, not the one who's actually in the game, playing in the game. Sort of, you want to be the game engine, not the player in the game. It's a different sense of self. So for both its sense of self, the difference is your sense of self in order to receive, which is before the barrier, or in order to bestow, which is in order to control after the barrier.
It's like someone working on a theory in physics. And if you can get this image of this huge blackboard, someone like Einstein or something like that, and he's got this chalk and he's got an idea and he's translating it into like math, and he's writing on the board. He looks at that and he discerns it and he goes, well, maybe he gets a discernment that maybe it's going to go here or there. It's more about the feeling expressing itself on the chalkboard in the context of the reality, that at the end of all this discernment and feeling, he may very well have the theory of relativity, rather than just going to a textbook or talking to colleagues. That it's something that has to be done. You do it with friends, but I think it speeds up the process. But it's something along that lines where you feel it. It seemingly comes from nowhere, but you feel it, and then you're able to express it.
It definitely has to become part of you. It's definitely, you're not wanting to learn something somebody else is doing. You're really wanting to make it your own, right? You really want to make it that you're not saying, oh, I'm learning somebody else's idea. You want to make it your own idea. And that's why you actually need the ego. You need to really basically make it your own and name it on yourself, instead of like saying, like you said, the idea of law of gravity, of physics. you have to be like you're the one who's actually making it, and not that you're learning somebody else's understanding of the law of physics. You have to make it like you're the one who actually came up with it. Like it's yours. You really have to internalize it that deep.
But isn't that why they usually name a physics theory after the person, like Michio Kaku or Albert Einstein's theory of relativity, or like that, because it does come from them, and seemingly from.
So the idea is that each person has to basically name it on themselves. It's like if you've got Murphy's law, right? Everyone has to basically name it their law. Like it's like if I took Murphy's law and internalized it, now it's called Zakkai's law. It's not Murphy's law anymore. It's my law. Everyone has to make it their own. It's called writing the Torah on their heart.
And Zakkai, the part of growing your ego, we use our corporeal desires to grow it, like meaning, okay, I want to be in control of my life so I can have the money I want, the girl I want, or just that, or it's
whatever
different.
You want. You can use any corporeal, whatever you want. There's no limitation on why you want it. You just need to really want it with everything. The idea is that the restriction is done after you cross the barrier. So you don't have to work on restricting your desires before you cross it. Before you cross, use your entire being to want to cross. Afterwards, the system will already do that restriction for you.
So what matters is like the intensity of how I want to get it, like now,
Yes.
whatever I want.
Yes.
That's
what it's called, intensify in the heart.
But there's also the matter of internalizing the whole world within me.
Exactly.
So how are those?
That's done in 4.3. So you're first working on growing your ego, which is in 4.1, 4.2. Then you're internalizing the world within you in the end of 4.2, 4.3, and 4.4.
Okay.
All right. Let's continue. Chapter 3.
Before we move on, there's a couple of interesting questions in the chat that Caesar posted and Mary about the pain point. Could you cover those, please?
Do you want to ask them? Because I can't look at the chat right now.
Jenny also posted one that is also quite interesting.
Yeah. Caesar posted the pain point looks like the main reason to bring many disturbances and desires to change in our situation and state. How do we use the pain point to advance fast so that we can go through the phases? That's Caesar's question. And right after that, Mary has another one. It's is the intensification of the pain point a push to the next degree? Well, I think these, before we move on, these two questions about the pain point are very interesting to me.
I agree. So the idea is that the pain point is the reason why you want this whole thing to be done. Like, what is the thing that is making you actually come to Kabbalah in the first place? The idea is that it takes that evolution, going from that 1.3 to that 3.3, to figure out what is your pain point. What is the reason that I'm in Kabbalah? If someone's, let's say in Avram, their reason they're in Kabbalah is because they constantly are attracting to themselves an unsupporting environment. And then they're in Kabbalah to basically clean their desires, understand what they really want, and stop attracting to themselves situations that they think that they don't want. Right? So you're basically dealing with that pain point all the way to enter correction. The importance of knowing your pain point is really to get that intensity so that you can bring it all to the pain point. It's like, what do I need to correct this pain point? How do I stop attracting an unsupportive environment? How do I bring myself to attracting a supportive environment? Were there any other questions in the chat?
Well, actually, it was a Jenny question that Mark read, not Mary's.
Oh,
just clarifying that.
No problem. All right, let's continue. The Creator has no will to receive. Explanation of the origin of the neshama, the soul. Number 15. Now we shall explain the matter of the origin of the neshama, soul. It has been said that she is a part of God above, etc. We asked, how and in what does the tzura form of the neshama soul differ from his all pashut, simple light, that separates her from everything? We can now understand that there really is a great Shinui Tzuah, change of form in her. Although he contains all the conceivable and imaginable forms, still, after the above words, you find one Tzuah form that is not contained in him, namely the Tzurah form of the will to receive. For whom would he receive from? However, the Neshamot souls, whose creation came about because he wanted to delight them, which is the thought of creation, were necessarily carved with this law of wanting and yearning to receive his Shefa abundance. That is where they differ from him, because their Tzurah form is different from his. It has already been explained that a corporeal essence becomes separated and divided by the force of motion and remoteness of location. However, the spiritual essence becomes separated and divided by Shinui Tzuah, change of form. The measure of Shinui Tzuah, change of form, determines the measure of the distance between one another. If the Shinui Tzuah, change of form, becomes completely opposite from one end to the other, then they are completely severed and separated and can no longer suck from one another, for they are regarded as alien to each other. So it's basically saying here that the only form that the Creator doesn't have is a will to receive. It doesn't have a perception point. It doesn't have a single point where it's all coming towards it. There's nothing that it's wanting to receive. It's all the abundance, and it doesn't have a point where it's wanting to receive the abundance from. And the problem is that when the will to receive cascaded from the thought of creation all the way down to reality, you basically got to a point where the will to receive was so thinking about itself, it didn't think of the abundance anymore. It's like when someone is getting angry, and all they can think about is that they're angry. They can't actually think about the person they're actually angry. They can't even think about the thing that caused the anger in the first place. Like many times you see children, and they get extremely angry, and then you ask them, what are you angry about? And they forget, because their anger has disconnected them so much from the problem that they even had in the first place, they forget about it. And that's the way we are in reality, where reality is so disconnected from the abundance, from the source, that we're basically constantly thinking about reality, not thinking about the source. We're not trying to think of the abundance itself. And that's why we need the will to bestow, to sort of even ourselves out, so that we'll have a will to receive instead of being a will to receive.
I have a question.
Yes.
I'm a little confused, because on one hand, it is clearly said here that the Creator does not have a will to receive. At the same time, we are going to be de facto the Creator, and when we are there, we will have a will to receive. So what's the difference between us as a Creator and the Creator? Because we will have a will to receive.
Yes. So the Creator in the beginning did not have a will to receive. And in the end, the Creator will have a will to receive.
Can you repeat that again? Sorry.
At the beginning, the Creator did not have a will to receive. And at the end, he will have a will to receive. But the Creator itself, if you look at it itself, does not have a will to receive. So at the beginning, it was just the Creator. And now it's the Creator with the will to receive. So the will to receive is not part of the Creator. The will to receive is an extension. It's an added. It's the creation.
I get it that it's creation. And what I heard you say was that if you look on a time scale, there was at first the Creator, and then he created the will to receive.
Yes.
But something is not clear enough in my thinking, so I'm reaching out to you and everybody else on this call. Because what I'm hearing is, on one hand, a very clear statement that the Creator at any given point in time does not have the will to receive.
Correct.
And at the same time, the Creator at a given time somewhere in the future will have a will to receive.
Correct.
It started without, it will end with.
Yes.
Okay, so there's an evolution of the Creator.
It's not the evolution of the Creator, it's the evolution of the will to receive. The Creator is perfect. The Creator does not go through any kind of movement, any kind of change. That's why we say that the creator
But it does feel like it goes through a change because it starts without a will to receive, and you're saying that it's going to end with a will to receive.
That's not called a change on the creator because we're saying that the will to receive is not part of the creator. We're saying it's the only thing that's not contained in him. Therefore, it's not a change in him. It's an extra outside.
All right. So let me ask you differently. When we will be the creator, will we, do you, at your stage, for example, have a will to receive? And what's your relationship to that will to receive of yours?
I have a will to receive. I use my will to receive. It's not part of me. It's not me.
Okay, got you. You answered it. Fine. I'm fine with that. That's fine.
I feel like this. The problem we think of it as a lack, right? Like, oh, if the creator doesn't have a will to receive, he's missing something. No, the will to receive is a lack. It's a missing. So you can't say that the creator, which is perfect, is missing imperfection, right? That's the only thing the creator does not have is a lack. It's like, oh, then he means that he's not perfect because he doesn't have a lack. No. How can you have a lack if you don't have something to lack from? If you are the perfection, that means by definition, you can't have a lack because you're perfection. So what you need to do is then create imperfection, create a lack, right? Which is not you, you're perfection, right? The idea of perfection, that it has no lack, right? So you're creating a lack. That lack is not part of you. So it's not that it doesn't make you, it doesn't change your perfection if there is a lack outside of you or not. It's like if you have a rich person, right? Having a poor person does not change the state of the rich person, right? The poor person is an extension that the rich person wants to give to. But you wouldn't say that, oh, if there's a rich person without a poor person, there's a problem with a rich person.
It's clearer now. I will need to digest a little more, but I think I'm getting the sense of it.
No.
Did you talk about it before as perfecting perfection?
Yes. Well, we didn't talk today, but yeah, the idea is that you're basically perfecting perfection. It's the idea of creating the lack outside of your perfection is in order to rise to a higher perfection.
All right, so I'm looking at article number 20, yeah. And there's a quotation here from Shamati, which says the following. It means that the creator created creations for his own needs. Can you just explain the difference? Reading it simply, all right, is like saying, okay, the creator had a need. A need, meaning a lack. That's why he created the creatures. The creature, right? Creation. So how do you read that sentence? I'll read it again. It says, I'll read it a little bit backwards, just so, okay? Hence, when the Creator created creation for His glory, as is written, and there's a quotation here, everyone that is called my name and whom I have created for my glory, end of quotation. It means, and this is what I'm asking, it means that the Creator created creation for His own needs.
He means
he
has a goal in mind. Like a need and a lack are different things, right?
All right.
Rich people have needs. It doesn't mean that it's a lack, right? The need of the creator was to create a will to receive and bring it to the size of the will to bestow, right? But it's not a lack. It's a direction. It's a focus. It's a goal. That's why we call it the thought of creation, right? So it's not a lack. It's a direction. It's a quest. It doesn't mean like a lack in self, in the creator. It's one of the things that, one of the things we're actually doing this entire path is to actually advance without lacks, to advance without anything going wrong. Like normally what happens is we actually only do things in life because something is wrong. We only buy milk because there's no milk in the fridge. We only get married because we feel lonely. We only advance because we're feeling like emptiness. We normally only advance because of lacks. The idea is to shift to a point, and that's called the path of pain. The idea is to shift to a point where the reason you advance is not because you have a lack, is because you have a goal, you have a need, you have a method, you have something you want to reach. And that's called the path of Torah, right? You're advancing not because you're like, do you have anything wrong? No, everything's perfect. So why are you advancing? Because I want to reach a higher perfection. I have importance of my next degree, not I have a lack in my current degree.
So the Creator had a goal.
That's the thought of creation. Yes.
We take that goal.
Yes. And join in with it. We're trying to join it we're trying to join consciously with the goal of creation.
Yes.
And make it our own.
Yes.
So I understand the difference. I better understand the difference between a lack and a need. And for me, it's like the Creator had a vision, okay? And the vision was, the vision means it does not have a lack. It has sort of like a goal, something greater that he wanted to move towards. What's the answer to the following question? Why does the Creator define a goal for himself?
We don't know. And that's called the essence, and we don't touch the essence. So we basically only deal from the goal and onwards. And if you look at the Creator before there's a goal, we don't talk about it. It's called the essence, and we don't deal with it directly.
All right, sounds good.
And the reason is, it's not because, if you do, something will happen. It's just, well, if there's no goal, what are you going to talk about? Like, if there's no discernment, there's no will to receive, there's no goal, what do you possibly have, then you can talk about the Creator without the goal.
Okay, this is very useful. Thank you. Go ahead, Daniel.
Is that for the very same reason that we don't speak about the final state either, the third state?
The what state?
The third state, like after the Ein Sof, the final Ein Sof.
No, we can talk about the state. We're talking about the state of inhumanity. What happens after that? No, we don't know, because the reason we don't talk about that is just we have no sensation of it, right? So the idea is we only talk about things that we have sensations of. And you could say that talking about a state which is too high from you, that's also considered talking about the essence, because you're talking about something that has nothing to do with you. You have to go through the states and you have to experience them yourself. And you're basically only going to be dealing with your current state and your future state, but you're not going to be dealing with your future state, for example. I think this is actually a very important point, because it's all about importance of your next degree. It's always about importance of your next state, and that you want to reach your next state, not because you've got pain in your current state. Pain in our current state can give us great feeling, right? Many times we can have pain and say, oh, life is bad. That's not what's going to advance you. You need to advance because of your future, not because of problems in your present. Azaria?
I guess it's like you have a goal to get a doctorate degree and you're just entering college. And so you start discerning, making your path from entering into your first year, as opposed to looking at applying for doctorate schools.
What is the reason? What is the difference?
That was an analogy of looking at degrees above you, as opposed to looking at the degree right above you.
Yes. Definitely.
Okay, the intensification of the pain point, I realize that, you get to a certain point and there's the pushes from behind aren't actually the way to progress or the way that progression occurs. But even so, when you do the pain points intensify along the path before a new state, are you just surrounded by your pain point to a higher degree of intensity just before a new state or a new phase?
The idea is that if your pain point gets to a point where it's overloading you, that means you haven't done enough preparation. You basically have to increase your preparation so that won't happen. So the idea is that if, for example, your pain point is a disappointing environment. If you get to the point where you're feeling that fear, that you're feeling that not supporting environment, all your thought is about your pain point, but you're getting like enclosed in it, that means that you haven't done enough preparation. Then you're going to have to basically spend time to sort of reduce its overload on you. And then you're going to be able to breathe again and start advancing again. And we call that a shell. The idea is that if you do the preparation, then those moments aren't meant to happen. There's not meant to be that overload point where you're just surrounded by your pain point and you can't think else.
So that it seems to make sense then. So like if you've, are coming out of a shell and you were in a shell for too long, obviously, then you won't have done the preparation work because you were in a shell for a period of time. So when you begin to come out of the shell and that pain point is intensified, it seems like it makes sense that it would be an intensification of a pain point because again, you haven't been connected to your environment like you should have been during the pain point. Is that
exactly?
Okay.
It comes like in pulsing sort of situations. So if you're not dealing with a certain concept that is bothering you, it will reawaken multiple times, and you're basically given in between those moments where it like goes down. That's basically your time to start doing that preparation. And if you don't, you'll get into that frenzy of your pain point again, and then you'll be like locked out until you get out of it again. It's you get like these moments where you can breathe, and that's where you're tested. Can you advance because everything's fine, or do you only advance because everything's going wrong?
Well, no. You're going to advance when there's pressure, of course. But it just seems like what got you into the shell was a hit, and then the shell, if you are fighting the shell or whatever, that's a hit. And then the work to get out of the shell and you're hit again, it just, and then, it just seems like that's a lot of repetitive,
that's the part
hits, and you're just struggling to get out of the shell. And so, I don't know.
That's the path of pain. The path of Torah is where you don't have to go through all those hits, and you can go through it very smoothly. And that's the idea. Like I think this is one of the Shmari articles that if there's hardship, then you're in impurity. You're in a shell. If you're in holiness, the actual path is actually very easy. You're not meant to feel these intense emotions, apart from very specific points like breaking the vessels and the pain point degrees and stuff like that. Apart from those, you're not meant to actually experience any hardship whatsoever. It's meant to be very easy for you. And if it's not easy for you, it means you're not integrating correctly in the environment and not using the content that you can use.
Well, okay, so I understand that, and the time that I progressed the fastest is when I had a break of almost a month, and I was able to devote my time outside of of this and to continue to discern the writings, the diagrams, and work intensely with the group. My corporeal life that requires my attention, my job. For whatever reason, it may consume a certain amount of time, and I'm sure others have experiences like this also. And then other environmental factors. Coming out of a shell is especially if you've been in there for a while, is not an easy task when you have the other things. So, like you said, devoting the time and doing the preparation work, it's not it's a challenge. It's a huge challenge. So those double, triple, whatever hits that you feel, it's not so simple as saying, you just got to do what you got to do and do the preparation. It takes time and effort to do that, and you've got to be able to have the physical stamina and the emotional and it's all about the environment too. At least for maybe an Abraham. So it's not just that. It's there's got to be a balance in it, and maybe that's what I'm trying to express here is that
It's
And
less,
it's like there's not a balance so that I can gain footing again. It's very challenging to gain footing, and that's what I'm struggling with. I have the desire, don't want to be experiencing those, and now I recognize, because of your words, I'm probably still in a shell, which is frustrating because I want so much to be out. It's just how do you regain your footing?
it's less about quantitative and it's more about qualitative. So you can be in the method, I think in Rav's book, Path Kabbalah, he says you can spend 2 hours a day max on this whole method and still advance. So the idea, it's not about the time that you're investing. It's like at the Congress, right? Everyone could be at the Congress for 3 days, spending the exact same amount of time. What are they doing in the Congress? They could be just doing kumbaya and enjoying themselves and do zero advancement, or they could be really working hard, collecting discernments. What's the next state? Using people, trying to express themselves, going through huge descents, ascents, one after the other. Still 3 days, but one goes through, entire like jumps and numbers, and the other is just staying where he is. So it's not about, I would say if someone's feeling that they're spending too much time, it's probably because they're spending too much time, not enough quality, and they can actually reduce their quantity, and then the amount that they actually have in their quantitative amount, they can increase with the quality. They can sort of intensify when they are in the sessions. It's not about, I need to be in everything. There are some people, for example, they have corporeal needs. They can't be on the sessions, and that's totally fine. That's not what's stopping them. It's more about the qualitative than the quantitative. It's more about how you invest in yourself in with your sense of self, and less about how much time the clock is moving around.
Well, and I can say, because I'm still in this spot where I am frustrated, I'm in this Zoom because I know I need to be here.
And
But
sorry, Jenny.
the chats and reading the diagrams and seeing the writings I just can't get there.
So that is a great discernment to make, for example. That's a great discernment to make, to say, I'm stuck. That's also a great state. One of the things that when you're in a shell, you don't think you're in a mess. You think everything's fine, even though everything's not. Right? That's why it's called a shell. It's like a cover. It's a protection for yourself. It's like you look like you're in fear. No, I'm not. Everything's fine. It's like, really, everything's fine? I can see that everything's not fine. You're like, no, everything's fine. That's a shell. But if you're just feeling a descent, that's not a shell, because you're in a descent. You're aware of your situation. A shell is when you're not aware of the situation. You're not aware of the state you're in. And if you're in a descent, that's fine. You're like, I'm a mess. And then you can use the friends, your individual, to sort of take yourself out of it, to understand what made you fall into the shell. How did you get out of it? And what do you need to do? What specifically do you need to do to make sure it doesn't happen to you again? All right. Let's end the session and enter the after party.